Jazzcast Pros.
How often do you public speak? I would guess it's a lot more than you think so in your head. Public speaking has really transformed since what we would consider traditional public speaking in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, because platforms like podcasts are public speaking. The conversation that I have with Amy Arbogast today is so good, and she gives so many great nuggets about public speaking, but they're not the ones that you think they are. It's not about how to maintain better eye contact, how to picture the person in the room in their underwear so that you're comfortable. Those are old school, they're outdated, and we have learned a lot about neurodiversity and how to work with neurodivergent brains. And Amy's specialty is how to use that when it comes to things like public speaking. It is an awesome conversation. I can't wait for you to hear. So let's chat with Amy Arbogast. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Rashawn, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. After spending a decade working in sales for a startup and talking with hundreds of other women entrepreneurs, I know it can be lonely, but you can do this. We are having impactful conversations with people walking similar paths to you, so pull up a seat. This is High Vibe Table Talks. I am very excited for our guest today. Amy, thank you for having a conversation with me today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Can you first share kind of who you are, where you're located geographically, and a little bit about the people that you serve?
Yeah, I'd love to. My name's Amy Arbogast. I go by Amy, and I'm the co-founder and lead coach of Spark Speak. And I'm also a professor at U of R, where I teach writing and public speaking, and I run their speaking tutoring center. I'm actually from Western Pennsylvania originally, outside of Slippery Rock, if you've ever heard of it. But I've been here for 15 years now, so Rochester definitely feels like home. I did my PhD in history at U of R. That's what originally brought me here, and then I just never left. And now, like I said, I've started my own business providing public speaking, consulting, and coaching. And so the people that we serve is sort of anyone who needs to work on public speaking. We do large group workshops for businesses or organizations who want to sort of like work with their team to improve public speaking skills or to improve their internal communication. And then we also offer coaching sessions for individuals who either have a public speaking project that they're working on, like a conference presentation or something like that, or who just want to improve their general public speaking skill set, and especially their comfort level with public speaking. That's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. What really resonated with me from our first conversation is just thinking about how much the term public speaking has really evolved. I took public speaking when I was in college, as everybody had to, but it was very much this, how do I get up in front of a room of 100 people and give a presentation? And now part of it, I think, is the rise of social media and just the different opportunities that are out there. But public speaking has so many more facets. You know, I know you've worked with people on interviews and going on podcasts and, like you said, even just speaking in front of your team. So can you tell us more about what your definition of public speaking is?
Yeah. And I think it's like when I was younger, I had sort of the same idea you did. Like when I was younger, and I think for many of us, when I thought of public speaking, I pictured like a stage. I think I pictured like my high school auditorium, right? Like the stage and the lights dimming and you having a microphone and addressing hundreds of people. And the problem is like so few of us actually end up doing that. Like we rarely, if ever, do that in our real lives. And so often people think like, well, I don't really need public speaking skills because I'm not standing on a stage. I'm not talking to 100 people at a time. But we do a lot of things in our normal everyday lives that actually rely really heavily on public speaking skills. If you are leading team meetings for your company, or you're having critical conversations with colleagues or with leadership, if you are introducing yourself at networking events, pitching yourself, pitching your business, having conversations with clients, all of those require public speaking skills that we're often not giving ourselves or giving our team members in order to do their best work. And I started to really recognize this. It's interesting that you pinpoint social media because I hadn't thought of that. For me, it was running the tutoring center for the last decade. I've had this real bird's eye view watching hundreds or thousands of you of our students come in for help with public speaking. And many of them are bringing presentations and speeches, but many more are coming in to practice for interviews and to have conversation practice, to say like, I'm having trouble making friends here, or I feel really nervous speaking up in class, or I have to go to a job fair and I have no idea what to say about myself or how to introduce myself. And it was in watching this center evolve over 10 years that I started to realize that things that I personally would never have counted as public speaking for others are some of the most high stakes, high pressure public speaking experiences they're going to have. So I think we gain a lot by broadening the definition to really validate that the variety of ways in which we speak to people do take effort and they do take skills and energy, and that they can make us nervous. So now I define public speaking as any occasion where you are communicating something that matters to you, to an audience with a goal. And that goal can vary widely, like maybe you're just trying to educate or inform or expand someone's mindset. Maybe you're trying to persuade them to hire you, to work with you, to believe what you believe. Or maybe you're just trying to build authentic connections and relationships with someone. But anytime that you are speaking to someone where you're trying to communicate a specific message and trying to accomplish as a goal, I think should count as public speaking.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you talk about that because it sometimes comes across as like you're either good at it or you're not, and I found that is something that I struggled with like writing. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm doing all this writing and emails and copy in my website. And so I had to take a writing course, and it was a muscle that I had to have somebody else guide me through using and continue to use, especially using that muscle in low stakes opportunities really helped me feel a lot more confident when I did have to use it in much higher stakes opportunity. And I think that is similar to what you're speaking to about, public speaking.
Yeah. And it's so important that we validate that work. Like you're a writer, writing those high stakes emails, writing blogs, writing even podcast scripts like that is writing. And we should give it its due, and recognize it for the work that it is.
A lot of what was previously taught with public speaking was a lot of masking, as far as like, this is the script, this is how you public speak. And if you struggle with eye contact, if you struggle with using filler words, if you struggle with certain things, then you just have to figure out how to talk yourself into doing those. And one of the ways in which you're really transforming, I think, the space is by saying, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable using those muscles for the first time, and you can do it in a way that is authentic to you to really help, because you said like, you're speaking about things that you really care about. And so if you're really focused on continuing to make eye contact, it's going to be harder for you to focus on getting the points across that you are really passionate about.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to talk about this because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I've become interested in the last few years in studying and working with and supporting neurodivergent speakers. And that's where my conversations about masking really stem from. But I think that we can take the lessons learned from working with these speakers and really apply it to all of us, recognizing that difference is such a strength and makes life so much more colorful and interesting. Research shows that 15 to 20% of the global population is neurodivergent. And by that, we just mean that their brains are built differently or function differently from the remaining 80 to 85% that we call neurotypical. And I've actually been sort of shifting. I'm in like a moment of transition in how I situate myself in this discussion. I've always sort of said we to mean neurotypical and put myself in that category. But the more that I've studied this and the more that I've talked to my friends and even some experts, I've started to recognize that I actually belong on more of the neurodivergent end of the spectrum, the more I read about what that feels like, the more I'm like, that's my life. That's how I feel. And so I'm starting to sort of feel more empowered stepping in and saying that like I can use we to talk about neurodivergent speakers as well, because I sort of now identify myself among them. And it's important to recognize that while neurodivergent speakers may struggle to meet those very like 1990s expectations of public speaking, like making eye contact, reading your audience, not interrupting when someone speaks, they also contribute so much. Neurodivergent individuals are found to be incredible problem solvers, really creative, especially resistant to groupthink. And studies even show that they're often more compassionate and empathetic. So they make like amazing colleagues and team members, not to like toot my own horn, but they make like amazing colleagues and team members, but they're also often unemployed or underemployed at like really alarming rates. One study I read cited like a 30 to 40% unemployment rate for neurodiverse individuals. And it's largely because they communicate differently and struggle to meet these expectations. So, someone is hiring and doing interviews and they interview someone who can't make eye contact. They might think like, well, this person lacks confidence. This person was disrespectful. This person won't be able to engage with people. And then they don't hire them. And we don't know that any of that is true. They have just made those assumptions based on that lack of eye contact. And so masking is when neurodivergent individuals work hard intentionally to take on the behaviors of neurotypical, when they force themselves to make eye contact, force themselves to not interrupt, things like that. And they're really, like you said, sacrificing their own authenticity to meet these standards. And the way I describe it to people who have never experienced this is like, imagine you've been asked to give a speech on a stage to 100 people. Already super nerve-wracking, right? Like you have so many things you need to think about, like what you want to say, the order in which you're going to say everything, all of your notes, and how you're going to connect with your audience. And now imagine that somebody walks up and hands you a 10-pound bucket of water and tells you have to hold it the whole time and that you have to stand on one foot. And you're like, why? Like, this isn't making me better as a speaker. I don't understand the purpose of this. And you're going to really struggle to give that speech. And even if you manage to pull it off, the only things you're focusing on are what? Like the bucket and the foot, right? So you're not connecting to your audience. You're not thinking about your message. When we ask neurodivergent speakers to mask, we're asking them to take on so many additional burdens, and we're telling them that their eye contact is more important than what they have to say. We're asking them to sacrifice their own authenticity and the connections that they're really going to make with people and the message they really want to share for our own outdated expectations of what is good public speaking. So when I support neurodivergent speakers, and when I really support all speakers, I see this as a two-part mission. Part one is helping those speakers understand the rules of the game and accomplish their own goals. So if I'm working with a neurodivergent speaker who wants to get better at masking, they want to be able to fake eye contact, they want to know what kind of social cues to look for, that's their goal. I'll help them with it. I meet people where they're at. I recognize that people are in a variety of circumstances, and I want to help everyone succeed as best I can. So I help them with their own goals. I help them become the kind of speaker they want to be. But part two is also challenging all of us, neurotypical and beyond audiences, to revise our own expectations and to welcome other speaking styles. Why are we making people hold this 10-pound bucket? Like, are you really telling me that if someone can't make eye contact with you, you're not going to pay attention? Like, really? Like, there's no other ways that they can reach you through their vocal variety or their presence or just their content. I just the way I say it is like, I refuse to live in a world where our definitions of success are that narrow. And I have seen what we have to gain from expanding our table and welcoming different styles and different ideas. We all do better when we all do better. And so it's really a two-part approach of supporting speakers, but also challenging audiences to revisit their own misconceptions.
I think that is so Well put. And but I also love that you talked like you brought even in like the table metaphor, because that is a huge pillar of this podcast of like my mission and how I'm building business. And I think that bringing more diversity of thought, diversity of how your brain works, diversity in life experience can do nothing but make us and our community better. And I just think that that's so impressive to be able to create a space where it's like, oh, well, been told that I'm supposed to fit into this box my entire life. And now you're giving them this space to say, but you don't have to, and how can we enhance and amplify the things that make you in a way that does feel authentic and organic and aligned, because I think that that's how we get the most creative work, the most beautiful work, the most passionate work, is by saying like, can I take your strengths?
Yeah. And the most genuine connection too, right? Like we often have this idea of public speaking as like kind of schmoozy and playing a character on a stage. And like, it's 2024. No one is interested in that. Like we are interested in real people, in authentic stories, in genuinely getting to know people and feeling like they genuinely know us. So why would we ask people to be anyone other than themselves?
I do want to pivot a little bit to like your business and yourself as an entrepreneur, because I think that that's, another piece of it. And so, you do have a business partner. You said you're a co-founder, and I don't think I've had any other guests who are co-founders. So, and it kind of goes hand in hand with us talking about communication. And so how has that experience been? How do you navigate when maybe you disagree on a path to go or pricing or proposals? Like, how do you navigate those conversations?
You're giving me the chance to gush about Maria, which is one of my single favorite things to do in the world. Maria Sepulveda is my business partner. I adore her. I could never and would never have started this business without her. Our story is kind of funny, and it's a major reason why we succeed as partners. I first met Maria in 2016 when I was her professor. She trained as a speaking fellow in the tutoring center that I run. So I taught her, and then she worked for me as a tutor until she graduated in 2018. And hands down, one of the best tutors we've ever had. Really wonderful and warm and helpful. She was the first tutor to crack 100 sessions. We named our annual tutoring award after her. It's the Sepulveda Award that we hand out every year.
Oh my gosh.
Her ego's through the roof. Just kidding. I know she's just kidding. We have I'll touch on it in a minute, but we have a culture of roasting each other. That's just what we do. But she was also just someone I immediately vibed with. I completely respected. I think, we always say we learn as much from our students as we teach them. And that was completely true from Maria. She had this marketing business background that just transformed who we were as an organization. She was the first person to get us a logo, get us branding, and we're still using that years and years later. And so when I had the idea of starting this company, when I started to think I'm training the tutors to do the work that I want to be doing. I want to be helping people with their public speaking, not just teaching others to do it. I really wanted to start the company, but I was really lacking the courage and I call it activation energy to get started. I just couldn't take that first step. I knew nothing about business, and I just couldn't bite the bullet and do it. And I said to my husband over and over, if I could just get Maria, I would start this company. If I could just have Maria, I would do it. And I thought she was in Maine. That's where she went after graduation, after I walked around singing, "How do you solve a problem like Maria?" leaving my version of the Sound of Music classic. She's so sick of that joke, by the way. But so I thought she was in Maine, and I found out she was in Rochester finishing her MBA at Simon. And I was like, oh, everything's falling into place. So we had lunch, and I told her about the business, and she loved it. And she was fully on board from day one. And the first conversation we had was about the kinds of values that we wanted our company to have and the kinds of work we wanted to do. And that very first day, I wrote on a Post-it note, clear, accessible, ethical, and stuck it to my computer. And if you go to the values portion of our website, that's what we believe public speaking should be. clear, accessible, and ethical. Like that's the work that we do. So we have such a strong foundation because we have worked together for years, because I trained her. So I know that she knows what she's talking about. We speak the same language, but we also fill in gaps for each other. She's my business person who's teaching me how to run a business. And I'm more, into research and academia. I can fill her in on current trends in public speaking and what she's missed since being out of the game, although she was never really out of the game. But in terms of like how we work together and what happens when we disagree, I think that like we have two things really going for us. One, we're such communication nerds that anytime we have a miscommunication, we're like pumped about it because we get to pick it apart and analyze it and see what happened and overthink it to death. Like we're so unfun about it, but we love it. It's fun for us. And the other part is we just fundamentally trust and respect each other so much that like when we have a disagreement, I was thinking through this because we had sort of, talked about this. And when we have a disagreement, my thought is never like, how do I convince Maria I'm right? Or how do I make an argument for my case? Or how do I bring her onto my side? Which I actually think is like what a normal public speaking person would tell you to focus on. My first reaction is, what am I missing? Because I trust her so implicitly that if she disagrees with me, it has to mean there's something I'm not seeing. And every time that's exactly what it means. She's always catching things I don't see and vice versa. So it's like in having this partner, I have a really close friend who's also like an extension of my brain. And I get to think with this just renewed capacity and speed. But we also just like have made it a priority to cultivate a really fun work culture. Like we have a really competitive employee of the month program, even though it's just the two of us. It started as a joke. Like we were like, oh, what if we did an employee of the month program? And then we both were immediately like, what if we did an employee of the month program? And now like it's an honest debate every month as to who wins. And if anyone like has a big day, like they land a client or they find a really good lead, we're like, oh, that's employee of the month right there. And like the month that Maria filed our taxes, like she won it hands down. So we're doing that. Like we're debating having a secret Santa, even though it's just the two of us, and like pretending like it's a secret. And like I said, we're just like constantly joking around to the point where like we have trouble stopping, and we have to practice a 1 hour workshop and we have to block out like 3 hours for it because we know we're just going to goof. Like I say, we're the friends that teachers would have had to separate in class because we're just like constantly filling in each other's sentences. But it makes work really fun. Like I genuinely always can't wait to like do stuff with her and do workshops. We're just having a blast.
That's awesome. Awesome. I love all of those tidbits, and especially like bringing fun into work, like on my mastermind calls every Monday, we talk about like, how are you going to find joy this week? And it's like, it's in the season of like girl boss and hustling, and we lose a lot of sense of that. And so being really intentional about bringing that into your day-to-day is really crucial.
And like I never actually wanted to own my own business. My dad owned his own engineering firm when I was a kid, and I saw how much work it was. I saw how exhausting it was and how isolating at times it felt. And that was never really a goal I had. So my rule is like, this has to be fun and I have to love the work I'm doing, or else like it is not worth it to me. So we make it a priority to do the work that we care about, to really make sure that we feel like we're helping people and that we're putting our energy in the right directions, and just sort of letting it evolve the way it's meant to in ways that like make us still want to show up.
Yeah. And one more question about business, and then we'll get to lightning round questions because as always, this time flies so fast. How are you navigating all the hats that you wear during the summer as a mom, an entrepreneur, like that whole balancing act? What does that look like for you right now?
Oh my gosh. It's, I have two kids. I have two boys who are 8, and my youngest turns 5 today, actually. So happy birthday, Matthew. And we are big summer camp fans. My children love routine and they love to be out of the house. I try not to take it personally that they do not want to be there. They're giant extroverts and they just want to be with other kids. So it's lucky that they want to go to summer camp and that we can send them to summer camp. I feel like I worked out like the perfect golden schedule this year of doing the outside camps first and then the inside camps when it gets too hot. But, even that's challenging. Every week it's like, okay, where's drop off? Where's pickup? What time do I do each thing? Who do I drop off first? Do I have to pack a lunch? I don't know about you, but I feel like we're never not washing swimsuits and towels. It's just like a constant rotation. But then there's also just like you were saying about finding the joy. Like I've always loved summers for the break that they offer, not just in terms of like, okay, you don't have to work during the summer, but it's just something different. I had some of the best experiences of my life working at summer camps when I was younger. And I sort of chose academia as a path because I always wanted summer to feel special and magical. It's never been a summer off. That's a myth, but it's different. It's something different. And I love the seasonality of that. So I also really make sure that even with all their summer camps and even with our busy schedule, that we do take the time to slow down. We take the trips to Seabreeze. We go on the road trips to see the grandparents, and we're going to Baltimore next week to visit one of my best friends from college. That, we are like slowing down to taste the summer is what I say. And so I also feel a little less of that mom guilt sending them to camp every week.
It's been such a great conversation. But Amy, are you ready for lightning round?
Okay, I think so.
What is a must-read book?
I'm going to go fiction because I only read fiction. Because again, I only read for joy. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid is the book I've been hyping for the last year. I think it's a beautiful story about success and aging and perfectionism and love. And it's unmissable. Carrie Soto is Back. It's everything.
Yep. I read that on a plane last summer and definitely cried like on the descent as I was finishing it.
It's like her books are always, you think they're about one thing and then they're about something totally different. And even when you go into the next one, you're like, remember, it's not about this thing. But then you get to the turn and you're like, oh my God, it wasn't about that thing. Like every time.
What does creativity mean to you?
Setting expectations aside and throwing spaghetti at the wall and not caring if it sticks or if it falls.
That's good. That's really good. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So disclaimer, I'm terrible at taking advice. I hear advice and I immediately want to do the opposite. But the biggest piece of advice that I've really internalized comes from my Pilates instructor that I use an app and I do her Pilates videos. And she says, slow work is hard work. And that has really helped me come to terms with building a business and that things are going to be slow and that you don't just want to fast forward through everything and get to the results, to let yourself sink in and let it be hard. Let this be a hard season and let yourself experience that.
Mm-hmm. And going back to joy, I was actually talking in my mastermind earlier this week about like, can you find the joy in the hard?
Yes.
Of like getting like, can you find the joy of like, this feels hard. This feels uncomfortable. This has anxiety built around it. And when you do it and take action on it, can you find the joy in that?
And to me, it's all about being human. And like, I'm so blessed and I love being a human, and being a human means the hard parts too. So I try to let myself, when I'm in one of the hard parts, say like, this is it. This is a joy. This is such a privilege that you get to experience this too.
Oh, I just got the chills. What is something that's on your bucket list?
Okay. This is the speech junkie in me. I would love to advise on a major political campaign for a candidate that I really believe in. Like, I watch the State of the Union every year as if it's the Super Bowl. Like, I nerd out. Nobody wants to talk to me that night. And I would love to advise on a political campaign and help craft speeches for something like that.
Oof. I am so manifesting that for you. And actually, when you were talking initially about like what public speaking means, I have a handful of friends who, especially around like big elections, they care so deeply and they have such a hard time communicating about their beliefs around the campaign because they care so deeply about it that they just want to get all the stuff out. And so when you were talking about something you care passionately, that is the first thing that came to mind, is definitely around politics because it's so impactful.
Personal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is the coolest shit you've done in the last year or are currently working on?
Well, I did make a Ninja Turtle birthday cake this weekend that I'm pretty proud of. But professionally, my coolest shit is what's coming up this fall. In October, I get to present at the Professional Speechwriters Association's global conference. And I'm going to be talking about supporting neurodivergent speakers, really tapping into what I talked about earlier. And I am I'm going to have to pretend to be cooler than I am when I'm there, because I'm just going to be fangirling the entire time. It's the opportunity of a lifetime for me, and I still can't believe it's actually happening.
So excited for you. And we won't give away any secrets, but we did talk a little bit before about where you're going with your speech. And I asked you if it was going to be recorded, because even the little tidbit that you gave me, I'm like, that is so brilliant.
I'm really excited for it. Yeah, it will be recorded. I don't know who it will be available to, but yeah, so I've got 2 months to put that together and just let it live. I'm excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? Where do you show up on the internet?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Speak about, doing things that aren't comfortable, but being authentic while you do them. That's LinkedIn for me. And so you can find me there as Amy Arbogast. And then you can also check out our website, which is sparkspeakroc.com, to learn more about what we offer, our values, and how we can work together.
Awesome. This was so fun. Thank you so much, Amy, for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
If you like that episode, please leave a review. Those are always so helpful on whatever platform you listen to this. Until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.
Greatest.